Nous avons désormais l'honneur de visionner une interview de Monsieur Dan Thomas des Nations Unies et du Global Compact, introduite par Yann Thomas déjà précédemment. We are honored to view an interview of Sir Dan Thomas of the United Nations and Global Compact introduced by Yann Thomas.
Now, before the intervention of Dan, I just mentioned is in charge of the communication partnership leaders of the UN Global Compact. We just arrived in the team of Global Compact recently, because now we are in a part of PRIME, the program of sustainable development young leaders. And it's very important as a pioneer and collaborative communication leader. Dan wants to talk to us and to join that great event for the young generations of researchers. Dan Thomas.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure to speak with you, Yann. You're right. We've known each other a long time, since we met in 2014, when the Secretary General of the United Nations invited the heads of state to come to New York for a climate summit. 1 year before the Paris COP21, and that was a critical time, as you remember, because it was important for the Secretary General to get the heads of state and government really engaged themselves personally in the climate crisis and addressing that crisis. And it worked, because 1 year before Paris, before they met again in Paris, they were fully invested. They had their governments there to figure out what every nation could do, what contributions every country could make towards addressing the climate crisis. And that's how the governments were able to reach agreement in Paris a year later. And of course, as you all recognize, in France and in Paris, the leadership of the French government bringing countries together in Paris in 2015 was a really crucial piece of multilateral work that the government of France did, and has now set the world, hopefully, on track to take the necessary steps to address the climate crisis. But of course, as we build up to COP26 in Scotland, in Glasgow, which will be hopefully at the end of this year in November, that is where, almost 6 years later, obviously, since Paris, that is where the world will need to take stock of how far we've come, but crucially, how far and how fast we need to go in order to stop global warming from going above, 1.5 degrees Celsius is the new target that we're trying to get all countries or governments or companies to really take seriously. That if we can limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, then we have a decent chance of being able to continue to enjoy living on this planet in the way that we live. And if we can't get that right, then we are potentially looking at a very different kind of world, probably not for our generation, but for future generations. So it really is a crisis which is going to require everybody to address, and the stakes are extremely high. And it's clear that the Secretary General has said that 2021, this year, building up to that climate summit, that COP26 in Scotland, this is really a critical year. This is a make or break year for climate change. Well, actually, on the side of the private sector, companies, businesses, we do see some real ambition from companies all over the world, big and small companies, to really address this climate crisis and to be part of the solution in addressing the climate crisis. And so we at the UN Global Compact, we work with the private sector. We are seeing some ambitious targets being set by companies, some ambitious commitments. And of course, we have, through the Science-Based Target Initiative, we have the opportunity to make sure that these are more than just words and commitments. These are actionable targets which companies are setting for themselves, but can actually be verified through the Science-Based Target Initiative. I mean, just during the last year, during the pandemic, this extraordinary 12, 13 months that we've just been through, more than 2,000 companies, 500 cities, 570 universities have made credible climate change commitments to reach net zero emissions before 2050, with very robust targets in 2030. It's clear that we're really going to need to halve emissions by 2030, which is only 9 years away. So we're going to have to really ramp up the acceleration. But in terms of your question, we are seeing companies stepping up, and we're feeling quite confident that more and more companies will follow suit. They understand, businesses understand that they have a much wider role in society, a wider role than just making profits. They have an important role to play in leading the world, leading their customers, their shareholders, their stakeholders, leading the world to a better place. That they understand increasingly their role in society. And there's increasing trust in companies and in business leaders to take responsibility for things much wider than just sort of making profits. And so we're hopeful that companies can really ramp up ambition, and as they do so, encourage governments to also ramp up ambition, and crucially, set in place the policies that will create a level playing field for all companies, to encourage all companies to move towards this net zero future. Absolutely critical. I mean, the one thing that COVID-19 has taught us, I think, as a human race, just in the last 12 months, is taught us that technology can really help us with some of the global challenges we face. We've seen vaccines developed in record time, vaccines that can hopefully change the course of the pandemic and keep us safe. Now, of course, we have the challenge to make sure that everybody can be vaccinated, everybody in the world that needs to. But technology has played a key role. Now, finding the right technology to address the climate crisis is critical. And so this generation, the younger generations, I mean, all of us, we need to work really hard to see how we can fix this climate crisis. Technology can play a really important role, but also we need to change the way we live. And that's the other thing that COVID has done, is that it's challenged us to change the way we live. It's forced us to do that. And we found that it's not that difficult. We have adapted. We have changed the way we live. We've changed the way we work, the way we commute, the way we travel, not too much travel. And we've changed the way we consume food and that kind of thing. So this is a moment in time for the whole world, and we see increasingly that younger generations are picking up this baton and really making it theirs. It's going to be critical, and so all of your students, it's just so encouraging to see this younger generation really taking this seriously. I mean, this is a crisis for humanity, and if we don't get this right, we're going to have a very, very different world. Potentially, this is catastrophic for the human race. We know that, and what happens in the next 10 years has the potential to really change the course of human history. think this is a challenge for everyone, every individual, every student, every academics have a huge role to play in finding the solutions out of this crisis. And it's not just an engineering question or everybody has a role to play in this. I mean, we're seeing some great sort of art. We're seeing some great ideas coming out of so many different fields. This is a sort of all of society challenge which we've been dealt, and I think it's going to be clear that the ideas are going to come from many places, and so we need sort of big thinkers. We need people who are willing to think outside the box, because everybody can play a role in navigating our way out of this crisis. And it's there's, I think, huge potential for these ideas to come from unexpected places. As we've seen with the COVID crisis, we've seen all kinds of people stepping up to the plate, changing, turning their manufacturing or their businesses, turning those very quickly into to address the pandemic, with diagnostics or with protective equipment. And we're going to need that kind of ingenuity. So I think everybody has a role to play, whatever the discipline that people are working in. And hopefully this really important generation, faced with this difficult challenge, will find ways in many disciplines to address this crisis. It really is critical. I mean, we've got 10 years, essentially, the next 10 years, before 2030 to reduce emissions by 45%, about half them. And we've got to get to net zero by 2050. And this is going to take some really big, bold action now, if that's going to be possible. If we don't get it right, the future looks very, very bleak. We're beginning to see the effects of global warming through cataclysmic climate events, flooding, that kind of thing, and we can see that it's extremely frightening. It's very unpleasant. This is going to change the course of human history, and so we've got to get it right. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Dan Thomas and Jan Thomas, for this important presentation.